Welcome to those of you just joining us. Very intrigued to know if Rebecca Chapman is any relation to June Chapman. So just encouraging you to check in, head to the chat, tell us a bit about where you are or what organisation you work with. It would be lovely to hear from you. So thank you for starting that trend off, Joanne. That's lovely. We have a steady stream of people joining us. Oh yes, Joanne, to be encouraged, please share. I'm interested to know where you guys work. You know, what brings you here today, perhaps? So Joanne works at Children in Need. It's a very busy time. Yeah, I can imagine. Lots to do all year, but yes, particularly busy now. The number of people joining us is kind of steadily going up. So we will wait till 1 minute past 2 and then we will get started with our content. Louise works for the NHS as a paediatrician. Fantastic work. Hi to Catherine and Charlie. Ah, wonderful. Laura works at Centrepoint. Welcome. Anne Wynne from the Carers Network. Like it, Joanne works for Laura. Cool. Welcome to Sarah from the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. Oh, hi Rachel, good to see you again. It's nice to have some familiar names, some Productivity Ninja fans. That's great. Oh, Wessel, welcome from South Africa. Oh, it's not Rachel, it's Chris. That's okay. You're welcome as well. Yeah, we have got a good bunch of people, haven't we? That's wonderful. People from Switzerland, Belgium, Devon. Fantastic. Okay, we've got people from all over the world we've got lots of people represented in the charity sector, statutory sector. I'm sure there are people from other professions here as well. So we're going to crack on. Our plan for this afternoon is, I think, Jess, correct me if I'm wrong, our advertised finish time is 3:45? Yeah.
2:45.
Cool, great. So my name's Hayley Watts. I'm one of the productivity ninjas at Think Productive. Jess is one of our, Jess, I can't remember your job title. Jess is just like one of the wonderful people who makes the stuff happen.
I like
that. I'm particularly interested in delegation because I used to manage a team of people that included volunteers as well as paid staff. And the thing about delegating to people who volunteer is when you're rubbish at it, they leave. So I learned about that the hard way and that I wasn't really all that good at delegating. So I kind of made it my mission to go and learn a bit more about delegating. One of the things that I remember doing was taking part in a training workshop where you fill in one of these quizzes, you know, are you A, B, C, D, all that kind of stuff. And there are lots of options. And I remember reading this question about, well, what's your approach when you delegate? Is something like option A was to, collaborate, listen, find out more about what the person had understood from what you'd asked them to do. I was like, no, the one that applies to me the most is just, I just asked somebody to do it and expect it to be done. And I ticked that because that was kind of where I was at the time. But at the same time, noting to myself, well, that's not very realistic or reasonable. That's possibly, Hayley, where you're going wrong. So some of the things that I want to share with you today are some of the tips and tools that I've learned. We do a longer workshop about delegation. This is just to give you a bit of a taster, some tips, and we'll have the last 15 minutes will be reserved for your questions. So if you do have a specific question you would like to be answered, please just pop that in the Q&A section. And then when we come to the questions, we'll be able to see what questions people are asking. I will also, during the course of the session, I'm sure, be asking you to head to the chat as well to share any kind of specific answers to specific questions there as well. So one of the key things I want to draw your attention to here, Think Productive, these are our values: psychology before technology, human, not superhero, trust and kindness are our rocket fuel. These things are all really relevant in relation to delegating. We want to trust people, we want to be kind, but we also want to recognize that delegation is quite a skill, and it's one that people very often get wrong. We all make mistakes with. So it's about learning from those mistakes. So if you make a mistake, you don't feel like you've quite got it right, let's be open, let's be honest about that, and let's try and learn from those mistakes so that we can do better next time. So we're going to have a little think shortly about what stops you from delegating and thinking how you might overcome some of those challenges. And I'm going to introduce you to just a couple of tools that will hopefully make delegating a bit easier for you. Most people will perhaps delegate to others, but will also be delegated to. So a lot of the tools and techniques I'm talking about here are also useful if somebody's delegating stuff to you, to be able to ask questions, use the models and the techniques that we're thinking about here to make sure you ask the right questions when someone's delegating work to you, to enable you to do a good job as well. So it kind of works both ways. So why do we want to delegate? How's that going to help us? Sometimes it might feel just a little bit easier to just do it ourselves. So why is delegation a good idea? Well, it frees up your time to do other things, perhaps the stuff that only you can do. We want to approach this with a growth mindset. The idea of a growth mindset is that we can all learn, we can develop, rather than saying, oh, well, I can't do that. You might say, well, I can't do that yet. It allows people to improve their skills and develop. And by delegating to others, we allow them that opportunity to grow and showcase what it is that they can do. I've mentioned trust already, and that's really important, integral to this piece of work. We want to build an organisation of people who can think for themselves, rather than having one person in the organisation or a small number of people in the organisation who do all the thinking and then just pass the work out to other people. That way we get, I guess, more robust ideas, we get more creativity, which allows us to innovate and hopefully do a really good job. So I want you to think about what stops you from delegating. We've got a little cartoon here. I think everybody's joined us online rather than over the phone. But just in case I've missed anybody, it says here, when I said you should improve security, I meant put a latch on the door, and the person's building kind of a wall. So sometimes when we ask people to do something, when we delegate, they do it in a way that's maybe different to how we might have done it. So have a think and head to the chat. Please share with us what stops you from delegating. So we've got a contribution there. Don't want to be seen as a demanding boss. It can take as long to delegate as it does to do it. Don't have time. Don't have time to explain the background. It takes a lot of time to explain things. Insecurity is an interesting one. I don't want to look like I can't be bothered to do it myself. So the word time is coming up a lot. I haven't got time. I worry about my team's capacity. Louise makes an interesting point. I feel once I've delegated a task that it's sorted, and then I get upset later when I find out it's not done. Pushing junior colleagues beyond their job description. No hierarchical power. I have to delegate to people that aren't in my team. Yeah, that's quite a skill, but still something that's important, and the tools and techniques we're going to talk about this afternoon will be relevant there. Jess, anything else to kind of pull out? These contributions are coming in thick and fast, which is lovely.
Yeah, just another common one, just that it's easier and quicker to do it yourself sometimes. I definitely feel that, and worried that others already have too much on their plate and they can't take what you're asking for on their plate on top of everything else they have.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So there's a sense of it might just be easier, quicker if I do this myself. Yeah, but then a sense that they've got other work on as well. They're busy too, which is something that we can help with at Think Productive. So lots of things there, lots of different thoughts. Some of those are quite practical, like it's just quicker to do it myself. Some of those are a bit more emotional. You know, I don't want to put pressure on people. I feel a bit insecure about doing that. So there are lots of different things, and there's probably not just one reason. There's probably several of those reasons. So why do we think that delegating might be a good thing to do then? I think one of the reasons we find delegation hard is it's this lizard brain thing. It's the insecurity. It's the what will people think of me when I get noticed for the wrong reasons. Somebody said earlier on in the chat, like, people have got too much work. I don't want to be a demanding boss. So we don't want to be demanding or unreasonable, and it might feel that way sometimes. So our lizard brain comes into play here. So delegation then is about giving people things to do and making sure that they do them. The reality is that you've got way too much to do. I don't think I've ever met anybody who is like, actually, I haven't got very much work to do. Certainly not somebody that's in kind of a desk-based role, for sure. So the first reason we might want to delegate and invest that time and that energy up front in explaining to somebody how we want something done or what we want done. It might take a bit more time initially, but there are going to be some long-term gains there as well. The second reality is trying to get everything done will ruin your productivity. So that's a quote from my colleague Grace. The goal around being productive isn't to get everything done. It's to get the things done that are going to make the most impact. And sometimes we need some help and support with that. Sometimes there's other stuff that just has to happen. And they might be some of the things that we're thinking about delegating. We want to delegate both of those types of activities, I guess. So the second reality, we work in a world where we respond. We work in a world where we are constantly bombarded with interruptions, whether that's phone calls, emails, WhatsApp messages, Teams messages, people coming up to my desk for those people who are back into kind of an office environment. The more you react, the less time you're spending getting the impactful work done. And it says here, the channels you use to do your job are the channels that prevent you from doing your job. So the emails, the meetings, and all that other kind of stuff. And that's why we feel busy. And that's why delegating well can help us. So I want to talk about one of my favorite things. Let's talk about cake. I want you to imagine that you're going to make me a birthday cake. It's my birthday in the not too distant future. I want you to picture this cake in your head. So you've got a very clear image of what my cake looks like. What flavour is it? What does it taste like? I'm just inviting you to head into the chat to tell me about my cake, because I'm quite looking forward to it now we're talking about cake. I want to know more. It's not a trick question. chocolate cake, big cake, lots of icing and chocolate, lemon drizzle. These all sound great. Classic Victoria sponge with raspberry jam. 3-tiered carrot cake. Oh, now we're talking. Raspberry and chocolate mousse. Pink piped roses. Ooh. Perfectly round coffee and walnut cake. Chocolate pear and cardamom. Oh, these all sound lovely. So we have here, we've got 70 people on the webinar today. We've probably got 70 different cakes. What I was hoping for is this. I mean, I'm not fussy at all. When we delegate, we sometimes have something in mind, right? We have a picture in our head of what that cake's going to look like, but without asking questions, without getting an understanding from the other person about what that looks like, the cakes you've made sound delicious, except coffee and walnut. I'm not a fan. But all the others sound absolutely lovely, and I'm sure I'd be happy to have those as my birthday cake. So when you give somebody a task to do, your idea of the finished product, in this instance, a cake, is very different to my idea. And that's different to the other 69 people taking part in the webinar as well. So we need to get used to this idea that perhaps if somebody else does something that we delegate to them, they might do it differently, but that doesn't mean it's wrong. So cake is cake, like 3-tiered carrot cake. I would be very happy with that. Traditional Victoria sponge, I'm there. These are all things that I enjoy. So that would all be fine. So part of the challenge with delegating is accepting actually the way I do something isn't necessarily the way you do something. But the result is that somebody gets the birthday cake. So that's all good. We've achieved our objective. I know that many of you are familiar with what we do at Think Productive. Some of you may not be. One of the things we talk about often in some of our workshops is this idea of boss mode and worker mode. Let's stick with the cake analogy because, well, why not? It's just gone lunchtime. It's almost time for cake. Imagine a factory where somebody's making cakes. They're making cupcakes. And my job in the factory is to take a cherry and pop it on top of the cake. And if the conveyor belt goes faster, then my cherries have to kind of come out a bit quicker. It's Jess's job in the factory to say, well, Hayley, you're going for lunch at 1 o'clock. So let's ask Christine to come and put cherries on cakes while you're out at lunch. So I'm doing the work, I'm putting cherries on cakes, and Jess is making the decision. Jess is deciding who's going for lunch and when, and perhaps what tasks need to be done and perhaps what tasks don't need to be done. It's somebody's job in the factory to be deciding, well, where are we going to ship our cakes to? How much are we going to charge for them? What are they going to retail for? Those kind of the thinking, the planning ahead, the preparing type decisions are what we call boss mode thinking. The putting the cherries on the cake is what we call worker doing. And very often the tendency when we're delegating is to identify what the work is and say, Hayley, I want you to come over here and put cherries on cakes. Okay. So you tell me exactly what the task involves. What we want to be able to delegate to people is more of the boss mode thinking. What's the result we're looking for? Well, the result we're looking for is that these cakes will have cherries on top. Or the result that we're looking for is we want to break last year's fundraising target with our Children in Need event this year. Perhaps the result that we're looking for is we want a written evaluation on the work that we did last year. What made the most profit? Where did our income come from? What, if anything, do we want to do differently this year? So they're the kind of the outcomes or the results that we're looking to achieve. So we want to move away from delegating tasks to people and move more towards delegating outcomes. There are some exceptions. The exceptions will tend to be if somebody's very new, particularly in a junior type role, maybe somebody's struggling a bit with their workload, or perhaps you're not sure they're the right person for the job. There are some questions around their competencies. But rather than giving them the worker mode task and just saying, hey, go do this, you might ask them, this is the result we want to achieve. I want you to tell me how we're going to get there. So get them to tell you what the worker mode is so that they're still doing the boss mode thinking for themselves. Other exceptions might be it's a one-off, or you need something on a really tight deadline. Then it might be quicker to do it yourself, or just get somebody to do the task. But on the whole, we want to be delegating in a way that encourages people to think for themselves. Because what we don't want is to be continually interrupted every time somebody meets a barrier, or gets a bit stuck, or they're not sure what to do next, that we have all the answers. So we want to empower others to be able to make those decisions for themselves. And that might mean sometimes asking them to check in with us before they do the work, once they've identified what they think the work might be. So we don't want to get in the details. We want to keep an eye on the bigger picture. So we've got a beautiful image here. We don't want to get in the trees. We're not looking for sticks and rivers. We are taking a look at the bigger picture, and what we call intent-based leadership. The guy's name escapes me. Somebody Marquet, help me out, Jess. My mind has just got this mental block. So
David.
Thank you. David Marquet does this great, there's a little YouTube video about this idea of intent-based leadership, where you don't tell people what to do, you tell them what the intention is behind what you're trying to achieve, and you allow them to figure out kind of how to get there. So you've got lots of people working towards the same goal and thinking about creative solutions, rather than people going off in different directions and carrying out different tasks. So we want to set some boundaries around what it is that we're delegating. So you might want to make a note of this. You might want to do this as we go through it. So thinking of when you're delegating something to somebody and you're explaining what it is that you need them to do, think of a fried egg sat in a frying pan. And the yolk is the first thing you might explain. It's your choice what you do within this boundary. So as long as the work's done in a week, or as long as it's completed within budget, for example, you do what you think is best, and I will support the decision that you make. So this is the sphere, if you like, in which you're making the decisions, and whatever you're choosing to do, I will support you as long as. The next level we have is, if you move into this area, I kind of want you to come back and check with me first, and we'll agree a way forwards. So I'm trying to think of an example. You're doing a launch event for a new product or a new initiative, and you've got a time frame, you've got a budget, you want the venue perhaps to be wheelchair accessible, and if you can't, if those things don't work, if you can't do the date or within budget, if we haven't got the accessibility that we need for the venue, then come back and check with me before you move forwards and kind of compromise on any of those things. Don't go past here. It's like, you can do those other things, but you mustn't do that. You mustn't spend more than we've got in the budget. We're not going to move the Christmas party into February. It does need to happen at some point near Christmas. Yeah, so you're saying, right, these are the things you want to think about and plan before you start giving that piece of delegation to somebody else. Very often the things we want to delegate feel clunky when we're first doing it. There might be some uncertainty perhaps, or indecision on our part or the person that we're delegating to. So just thinking about these three levels, what do I support somebody with? When do I want them to come back and talk to me? And like, don't do this. So it might be, well, we've got this structure in the organization. I'm the line manager, or maybe perhaps you're not the line manager. Maybe you're working more of a matrix structure. So just some clarity, come to me if you have a problem. I don't want you offloading this on somebody else. There might be lots of different things that could look like. So have a think about some of the things you're looking to delegate, and see if this idea, these three levels will help you with explaining that piece of delegation to somebody else. The other important thing is to know your people, to have a really clear idea of what it is that they're interested in. What skills do they want to develop? Perhaps what do they not want to be getting involved with? And thinking of opportunities to delegate things to them within that framework. So if you know that you've got somebody who doesn't particularly enjoy public speaking, and there's some opportunities to do that, and you know it's something that they want to develop, you might give them an opportunity to do that. Preferably not at the last minute. You need to give them a bit more time to prepare if it's something you know they're not confident with. So this is our team, or some of our team. This is Jess, this is when we met in person.
I know, in the good old days.
So I now know that Jess is into her food and she blogs about food. So like whenever we meet up, we tend to leave it to Jess to decide where to eat, which has been a good decision. Elena, who's our managing director, speaks Spanish. So we know that about her. We also know that Lee doesn't enjoy dealing with press inquiries. So by knowing not just what people enjoy, but also knowing what they don't want to get involved with, helps us to delegate and to delegate well. And Cara loves Excel. Well, somebody somewhere has to, I suppose. So there might be things that you don't enjoy doing that somebody else does enjoy doing. So thinking about how you might utilize that in your delegation. I used to work in an organization. I remember finding myself one Monday morning clearing out the communal fridge and giving it a bit of a clean, because it really was quite disgusting. And I was like, oh God, I'll do that, because I don't want to ask somebody else to do that. It's nobody else's job. It's a rubbish job. And this person on my team came up to me and said, oh, can I do that? I love doing cleaning tasks. And I was like, yeah, you go for it. You feel free. So something I didn't enjoy was something that somebody else did enjoy. So by getting to understand who enjoys what they want to develop, what they don't want to get involved with, that helps us to delegate more effectively and perhaps fairly as well, to give people those opportunities. So opportunity now for you to ask questions. I've talked about that idea of kind of boss mode, worker mode, delegating the intent rather than delegating the task. We've looked at the fried egg, and we've thought about who our people are and what they want to get involved with and all that kind of stuff. In a full workshop, we then have kind of a checklist that we can run through to help us kind of plan what that delegation looks like. But hopefully those tools we've introduced will begin to help. There's a question there from Alec. There are often tasks that no one likes to do, but they need to get done. What happens then? Good question. And I think the first thing is to not assume that nobody likes to do those tasks. Sometimes people do like doing those tasks, even, you know, cleaning the fridge. I mean, who knew? Other times it might be taking it in turns, perhaps, to do some of those tasks. Or perhaps creating what we call a power hour, where you say, right, okay, 2 o'clock on a Wednesday afternoon, we're going to do that thing that none of us really enjoy doing that much, but we're all going to do it together at the same time. And that doesn't make it seem quite so bad. My business partner doesn't like doing lots of things. Maybe there's an opportunity to outsource some of that as well then. Maybe to bring in some external support. Awesome, Alex sharing that's just been done. So if you do have any questions, I invite you to head to the Q&A to post those. Question here from Susie: what do you do if you give someone a task and they come to you with a question that's already been answered, or don't complete it properly, or with lots of mistakes? Very common challenge, I think, in relation to delegation. And I think one of the key things is to agree, when you ask somebody to do something and you go through the kind of the fried egg thing, to be talking about timescales. You know, this piece of work needs to be completed by, I don't know, the 15th of December. I'd like an update weekly or by the beginning of December in terms of where you're at. If you have a question, I'd rather you came to me in person than sent me an email, or whatever your preference might be. So make sure you do give people an opportunity to ask questions. Make sure you tell them how and when you want to be kept updated. So if it's somebody you've worked with before, you've got quite a lot of trust, you might just say to them, come to me if there's a problem. Otherwise, I'm going to assume that you're kind of on track with this piece of work. I might then, when I see them or when I speak to them, just say, how's it going? Do you need any help? If it's somebody I haven't worked with so much before, somebody that's new to the job particularly, then I might say, John, I'll check in with you in a week or two. You know, put that as an appointment in your calendar, that you're going to have a conversation to see how they're getting on. That gives them a bit of accountability and an opportunity to access some support as well. Louise, that sounds like an interesting thing. I've had a person say, I couldn't find the answer or sort the problem, so I'm handing it back to you. I think that's a really intriguing one. What I would ask somebody to do is to come back to me. Well, you don't know what the answer is. Come back to me with options. So don't be the person who always gives the answer, because they might come up with some better answers than you have. And it's also hard work for you. You want to pass that boss mode thinking back over to them. Lorraine has a question here about delegating a task to someone who doesn't enjoy it or want to do it, but it's definitely work for them that can be challenging and they keep putting it off. So I think, yeah, just explaining why that needs to be done, why it's their role, and also getting to the bottom of why they don't enjoy it. Maybe they find it hard, maybe they need some help, maybe they need some training, maybe they need some other support in some kind of way. Maybe they feel it's a bit beneath them, like it's a bit easy. Yeah, there should be somebody else. Then who should it be, and how are you going to help them? So it might be about giving them some ownership and responsibility there. Miriam's question, I think, is one of the key ones. How do you manage your own preferences? You want things done a particular way, but you don't want to micromanage. Well, why does it have to be done in a particular way, I suppose, is my question. If you're clear about the goal and what it is that needs to be achieved, thinking about, I don't know, recruitment. Okay, so you're asking somebody to advertise a role. Maybe it doesn't matter where, as long as people apply, and that they're the right people. So you might usually advertise, I don't know, on charity job. There's quite a lot of charities here today. Somebody might decide, well, actually, I'm going to try total jobs instead and see what response we get. Then, okay, they're doing it a different way, but you might still recruit the right person to the role. Joanne's empathizing there. You struggle with this too. So I think part of that is thinking about the cake. Okay, I didn't get my weird looking 3-tiered pink icing thing, but I would have been equally happy with a chocolate cake or a lemon drizzle cake or a carrot cake. That would have fulfilled my need to have a birthday cake. So just because somebody's doing it differently doesn't mean that they're doing it wrong. And to think about, well, actually, what do I really need from this? It might be that you do it in a particular way because you've had bad experiences of doing it in a different way. That might be something you want to share with that person that you're delegating to help them to understand some of the lessons that you've learned by making mistakes. We have an anonymous question. Problem solving is a real skill, and I'm struggling to empower my team to build their skills on this. There was, I think it was 2013, my colleague Graham did a whole year of different productivity experiments. And 1 month, his experiment was making decisions by rolling a dice. So one of the things he learned from that, which wasn't, by the way, to continue making business decisions by the roll of the dice, but he noticed that normally he might come up with 1 or 2 options. Different things he might do in relation to a problem, but because he was rolling a dice, he had to try and come up with 6. And one of his learnings from this experiment was that often it was ideas 3, 4, 5, 6 that were actually what he felt were better ideas. He just giving it a bit more time to think about the options. So whenever somebody comes to you with a problem, unless it's, the building's on fire, then you just need to act, right? But most of the time you have the capacity to be able to say to people, okay, I hear that this is the problem. Yeah, it's a tricky one, isn't it? Can you come back to me with just some options of things you think you could do? Don't have to necessarily decide which one. We could talk them through, but passing that question back to people to encourage them to take some ownership. Oh, lovely question here about how do you proactively plan delegation into your day? People tend to delegate tasks when they are almost due. So if that's people delegating things to you when they're almost due, that's quite hard, particularly if you've got a number of people in an organization doing that. Things become very reactive, and it can make it stressful. It might be that there are things coming up that that's going to end up in some work for you. So you might go to the person and say, I noticed you've got this meeting in the calendar. Are you going to need anything from me in preparation for that? So you're trying to preempt, you're asking questions to help get that work delegated to you earlier on. If you've got people who are doing that to you on a regular basis, you might say to them, well, you wanted me to write that report, but I've now only got a working day to do that. Do you need the full report? Could I give you some bullet points and highlights? I can get to the report to you next week, but perhaps I could give you in the shorter term that information that you need, whatever that looks like. So asking a few more questions perhaps, and trying to be a bit more proactive. It will depend very much on your job and what your job is. If you're working as a PA to somebody who's quite senior in an organisation, then probably by going through their calendar, you can get an idea of what they have on and what they might want from you. In other environments and different roles, it might be different. But yeah, asking questions, encouraging other people to be a bit more proactive. I feel micromanaged by the person above me. I'm worried it will impact how I manage those I delegate to. The micromanaging from above leaders leaves me less space to give freedom to others. What's the best way to approach this? There are lots of different ways to approach this, and without having the full background, it's very difficult to advise. So happy to talk to you about this offline. But I think one of the key things is to ask why, to be able to go to the person who perhaps you feel micromanaged by, and maybe to very pleasantly, politely explain, I'd like to try doing this a different way, or perhaps, well, I'm feeling a little bit micromanaged here. Can you tell me what you need so I can understand? I think those conversations can be really uncomfortable. They can be difficult conversations to instigate for sure, but hopefully there would be some good outcomes that come from that, and some honesty and just some clarity around people's expectations. Any advice on delegating without authority? You're not the boss. Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you, Matthew. I think it helps if you know people. Yeah, it helps if you've been able to build a rapport. It helps if you are able to understand what they're interested in, what's in it for them. How does it tie in with their priorities? Or if perhaps the piece of work you're asking them to do takes them away from their priorities, or they might not perceive it as being part of their role. Is it perhaps an opportunity for them to develop some new skills? So again, without any kind of context or background, I think that's a difficult one. But I think finding out about the individuals that are involved, we're talking about people at the end of the day and people's behaviour. The other thing you might want to think about is looking at Gretchen Rubin's 4 tendencies, which is kind of a framework around how, Jess is smiling because I'm a big fan of this, a framework around how people respond to both inner and outer expectations. So understanding what motivates people can assist with that. So if you know that there's somebody who likes to follow the rules, who likes to meet expectations, then by making that expectation clear, that's going to help you to encourage them to do that piece of work. They might be somebody who's more motivated by understanding the why they're doing something. So making really clear how this fits into the bigger picture, how this fits into their goals, how it fits into perhaps what the department or the business is looking to achieve, will help them see the value in that. Any other questions? I'm just looking back through the chat to see if I've missed any questions there as well, because there were a few posted.
I think you got them all.
Yeah, Catherine had a good response to something Susie said about somebody comes back to you with questions that have already been asked, or they make mistakes. And Catherine's very wise response, Catherine, I love this. I guess that's when you bring in coaching styles, they might not be happy with what they've produced either. We tend to think that the end of that delegation conversation is saying, oh, well, I need you to do this. Then the person reports back that it's done, or it's not done, or they're stuck, and you help them. But then at the end of the piece of work, to actually, I asked you to do this. Are you happy with how that went? Is there anything I could do better in relation to delegating next time? How did we work together? What could we do to improve? So that kind of just evaluating things as they come to an end or even partway through can be really helpful as well. We've got a few more minutes for questions if there are any more. Okay, so one of the other things is relation to that kind of that feedback conversation at the end, that thinking about, well, what worked here, what didn't work, did we work well together, did I get the result I wanted after I delegated this thing, what do I learn for next time? This comes from a book called Thanks for the Feedback. The idea that there are 3 different types of feedback. One is appreciation, like, thank you, you did a great job. Needs to be genuine, needs to be specific, you know, not just you do a great job in general, but you did a really good job with that piece of work. You know, the new website looks great, I can see that it's bringing, you know, us further up on the Google hits, you know, whatever it might be. I really like that you did that. Then there's the coaching type of feedback, the kind of, yeah, well, you did this bit really well, think maybe things didn't quite work out in that aspect of the piece of work that we did. What do we do differently there next time? So that's kind of the coaching, helping them to develop their skills. Or evaluation, assessment of progress or ability, or, you know, where they're at ranking in terms of, you know, other people on the team, that kind of stuff. If you're expecting coaching feedback and you just get appreciation, that's probably not going to work. If somebody's looking for some evaluative feedback, well, actually, you know, you're doing a good job, but, you know, there's 10 people on the team, you're ranking about 7th at the moment, they might want to know that. So maybe asking people what kind of feedback, you know, are you looking for some appreciation, a bit of a pat on the back? Are you looking for some coaching and some thinking about how you develop your skills in this area? Or do you want to know where you're at in comparison to others, or what you need to work on next? So that can be helpful too. And remember, for everything we don't like to do, there's somebody out there who's good at it and wants to do it and will enjoy it, even cleaning the fridge. Jess, tell us about what we have coming up next. Some exciting things in the calendar.
Yes, so our next public workshop is a week from today. It's on Wednesday. It's about influencing and persuading. So we've spoken a little bit today about influencing and persuading, trying to get people on board. You know, if you manage a team and you are delegating a piece of work, you know, how do you get people excited to do that? So we'll be covering things like that, and also your typical influencing and persuading if you need to try and secure budget from stakeholders and things like that. So you'll be finding out your own influencing and persuading style, and then learning how to use that in the day-to-day. And then our next free webinar, so that is with Hayley again, it's in January, and we'll be talking about the weekly review, so how it can help your, you know, feel in control of your workload, and why it's important. So I will post the links to those 2 things, and you'll get them in the follow-up email too, if you want to join us for either of those.
Thank you, Jess. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that session in January. I know for me, doing my weekly review helps me feel under control, or make the work feel under control rather, and in control of all my priorities. We also do a whole load of other workshops. We do some stuff around fixing meetings. So if you spend too much time in meetings that you don't feel are moving things forwards or helping you to achieve your goals, and are actually perhaps just preventing you from getting the work done, then that session can help you. I'm hearing from lots of clients at the moment who are experiencing, like, some people going into the office, some people are still working remotely, and what that means for people's communications. People feel a bit bombarded perhaps with too much information coming towards them. So supercharge your team communications helps with that. We have our Productivity Ninja's Guide to Hybrid Working and Leading Remote Teams. So lots more people doing that now than they were 2 years ago. So that's something we can help with. And for those of you who are perhaps feeling like you've got too much work to do and not enough time to do it in, how to be a productivity ninja and the way of a productivity ninja sessions that would be useful for you. I was delivering with a colleague this morning, and I've got another one tomorrow, getting your inbox to zero workshop. So excited about that, helping people to create a better relationship with their email. A whole load of other stuff that we're doing. Jess, we've just introduced mental health first aid to our repertoire as well. You got a moment to talk about that?
Yes, so we have 2 sessions, so a half-day session on mental health awareness in the workplace, so more of an introductory into these quite sensitive topics, and helping everyone learn how to help each other and notice signs of mental illness and supporting each other in work and life. And then we're also offering the 2-day mental health first aid training. So that's much more in depth. It's accredited by Mental Health First Aid England. And yeah, it's 2 full day, 2 days, and everyone comes away accredited as a first aider. So they can help notice when someone's in a crisis and then help them in that crisis, and also a bit of prevention, so trying to notice the signs before a crisis occurs, and putting the support in place for each other.
Awesome, thank you, very excited about that. It's great that we're able to help people with that. We want to know how you get on in terms of your delegation and productivity and well-being and all the other important stuff that we're interested in. Think Productive on all the social media channels that you would expect them to be. I tend to hang out mainly on LinkedIn, and I've also shared my email address there in the chat. If you are stuck or have any questions around delegation, you need any further help with that, then do let us know. Jess, anything else you want to say before we finish up?
No, that's it. Thank you, everybody, for joining. There was some brilliant questions there, and yeah, thank you, Hayley. Good as always.
Pleasure. Thanks, folks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I will stick around in case there are any further questions.